welcome back. Well, I've almost finished applying the materials to our Messerschmitt 109E using only those techniques that we've been introduced to. As you can see here on the ailerons and the flaps, we do have that bump map impression. That's on that section. I've also done the air intake and the exhaust guards here. Let's just take a closer look at some of them. Close it down for a moment and pop round. Zoom in a little bit closer, not too close. Well, here we are. As you can see, we have this exhaust covering all this exhaust guard there, and its paint looks as though it's actually been burnt and is sort of rusty. I actually accomplished that if we have a look in Photoshop. Let me just go for the exhaust. Here we are. This is our UVW map, and first of all I actually took this metal, scratched metal, and copied it and overlaid it, and then here we are with this layer. Let's have a look at that layer. So there it is, overlaid, and I've applied some paint strokes along. If we just turn the opacity down, we can see a little bit there. So as you can see, all I've done is apply the paint strokes as and where I thought it needed it. From that we were able to produce our specular level, the A section, which is the black and white, and then from that I actually produced a warm coloured specular B, and that gives it that reddish tint within the paintwork and on the rusty sort of sections, the burnt sections of the metal, and it produced the effect that we had. Let's just, as you can see there, let's do a quick render of that. There we go. I think that's quite effective there, and it is something that you would get around that exhaust if it's not being continuously sort of maintained. Now of course I'm not working on the material of this Messerschmitt as much as you can do, and of course I've worked on the air intake here, and if we pop back into Photoshop, have a look at the air intake. This is a UVW map, and I've stitched certain sections together and left others free. These are the two grid sections, the grills. So if I have a look at this now, you can see that I've actually used an image of a grill. If we zoom in there, so all it is the image of the grill set in, and then of course the specular map. As simple as that. Now with the flaps, what I did was do the UVW map first of all and lay it out generally. Then I created the bump map. That's the overlaid section there. Let's just come on to that, turn that up to 100%, and that's all it is. That's all that has created that effect within those flaps. This is the paint section here. Let's pop onto that, make that 100%, and that's all it is. And then the specular A level, again there you can see the monochrome section, and then the specular B level. Here we got it to that mottled greenish, dark green, olive green sort of colour, and that's how that's been created. Okay, well, popping back to 3ds Max, well, I'm now going to turn my attention to the propeller, but in particular the blur which is created when the propeller is rotating at high revs. Now the effect that I'm looking for is this one. There we go. We've got that classic blurring there, but we can also see through to the fuselage behind. Now we can't actually create this in 3ds Max even with a motion blur applied. So how are we going to do it? Well, let's first of all look at this animated. Now it has been slowed down quite a bit so you can see this. As you can see, we've got that classic blurring there, the motion blur there. We can see through to the fuselage behind, and this is even catching the sun, so that's a specular map which is included also. I think that looks quite effective. Still a bit rough, a little bit ropey, but it gives us that starting point where we can enhance it and take it even further. Okay, so if we can't create this with 3ds Max, how do we create it? Well, for this we need to go back to Photoshop. Well, this is what we need to create. This is a prop with motion blur. Okay, so let's get cracking. So let's begin by creating a new canvas. So File, New, and this time I want it 800 width and 800 height. We'll call it Prop Spin. '01 and say OK. Now I'm popping up to my ruler section here, left clicking on the mouse key, pull that down, pull one to the bottom, and you'll notice that they are snapping into position, so that's helpful. Bring that one across there and that one to there. Now I'm going for the elliptical marquee tool, up into the top left corner, get it lined up, left click, drag it down to the bottom right corner and get that lined up and let go. Then up to select and inverse over to my paint pot. We've got black selected, so we're going to fill that area in. Now we can deselect the marquee, and now back into select, and we're going to select all, over to edit, copy, edit, paste. So we've created a new layer now, and with that done I'm going to select layer 1 again. Paint bucket, I want white paint, and I'm going to fill in this area here. Next I want to start dividing this up a little bit more, so I'm grabbing that tool there, up to the ruler section, left click, and bringing this down so it snaps into the middle there, and this snaps into the middle there. Well, the shape that I want to create now is ordinarily associated with the radioactive symbol. It has 3 sections to it. Okay, well, I'm going to pop up to the polygon lasso tool and think of this face now as a clock. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. In fact, what I'll do is hide layer 2 for the moment. Now I'm going to start by popping into 9 o'clock right over there with the lasso tool, left click, and I'm going to drag that all the way through to 3 o'clock, to that edge there, left click with the mouse key again. Now I want to pop up to 1 o'clock, about there, left click and bring it down to 7 o'clock, but I want to make sure that that does go through that center section there, so down to 7 o'clock about, making sure that it's running through the center section, left click again. Now pressing the shift key and bringing this across to what would be 5 o'clock. Once there, left click, now up to 11 o'clock, making sure that the line runs through that middle section there. So where's 11 o'clock? About there. Bring that down, nice, left click, and then bringing this down to 9 o'clock again, and voila. Over to our paint pot. We want it black now, and let's fill this in. There we go. We have that characteristic tri-section there. Okay, well, up to select now. Let's deselect. I want the paintbrush, and I just want to fill these areas in which is still white. And with that done, let's select this tool here, and then we're going to pop into filter. I'm looking for a blur, and I want radial blur. Now I want to make sure that this is on spin. I want the quality set to best, and the amount I'm going to put to about 60. Once that's done, it's showing here how it's going to be blurring this within the spin. So now we can say OK. We can now pop up to Image, left click on that, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. Let's increase the brightness, and let's increase that contrast a little bit more, somewhere there. And let's now say OK. Now I can unhide this layer, and I also want to create a new layer. So up to Layers, New Layer, and say OK. Now it's put it in between layer 1 and layer 2, so let's grab layer 2 and pull that down so it's in between layer 1 and 3. I'm going to be working on layer 3, but first, popping up to our ruler section again, I want to pull this down and create a space between the top there. This is going to represent the yellow tips of our propeller. Okay, so one about there. Let's pull this down. Now there is a bit of a space that goes there, and let's pull this one down to give that thinner band that we do have, somewhere there. I'm actually going to do the same at the bottom there. But what have we got there? Just over 1, about 1.5. So if that one comes up a little bit more there, this one down to there, a little bit of a gap there, and then the thinner one approximately there. And we're going to do this on this side as well, about there, that gap, and the next section there. Same on the other side, so roughly there, the gap, and the final section there. With that done, I want my marquee, round marquee tool, the elliptical one, popping up to the top left corner, drag that and drag it all the way down to the bottom right corner, getting that lined up there. Now I'm pressing the Alt key, and I've got the minus sign there coming up for this marquee, so up to that cross section there, left click, drag that down. I want to go to the corresponding bottom right section there, line it up, and there we go. So that deselected the inner section. Now I want to create a colour somewhere in the yellowish orange range, something like that. Say OK, grab our paint bucket and let's fill this section in there. We can now deselect this. Let's go for the marquee tool again, and I want it coming down to that next line, about there, and down to the corresponding section. Have I got one too many in here? Probably. There's the gap. That looks right. So now pressing the Alt key up to the top section. Let's take that nicely lined up there. Left click, drag that out, and I want it, where does it go? It goes, I've put one too many lines in that bottom section, not to worry, so it goes in there. Okay, yellow is selected, paint bucket, and let's fill that in again, and now we can deselect that. Let's now pop down for our brush tool, and I just want to have a look at these brushes here. I want something with a nice soft blurry edge to it, so we'll select that one. 53, let's just have a look, make that a little bit bigger, about there. Say OK on that one. I want the white paint, so let's flip that for white. Now I'm just going to go where it is white and start taking out some of that yellow section there, round about down here, and some round here, somewhere like that. And with that done, what we can do now is grab hold of layer 3 and place it down in between layer 2. Let's now pop up to layer, flatten image, we'll go file, save the file, let's say OK, and then popping back up to edit and step back. And incidentally, if you wanted to reduce the opacity of this layer, then no problem, it may add to the effect. But now that we've created our diffuse image, what we have to do is create a specular image. So for that, I'm going to hide this layer, select layer 1, pop up to image, adjustments, invert. Now that that's inverted, pop up to image, adjustments, brightness and contrast. I'm going to increase the brightness, and the contrast, I think I'm going to leave that as it is, so 0. And we'll say OK to that. Pop up to layer, flatten the image, discard hidden layers, say OK, and now up to file, save as. There's our prop spin 01, so prop spin 01, and I'm going to call it spec A, and save. Say OK to that. Well, with that done, we need to be working now in 3ds Max, but I think we'll call that it for this session, and I'll catch you later.